Afternoon again. Hi. Thank you for being here this afternoon. I'm sorry I was taking a phone call at the same time. Some of us have got, this is volunteer. I got to make some money somehow. So Greg is up next. Where are you, Greg? There you are. He's Vice President of Manufacturing Operations at HEB. How many people have shopped at HEB? Yes, exactly. Great organization. And so he's responsible for the manufacturing operations. But most of your speaking is going to be around your chairmanship around the OPX Leadership Network as well. He's on the executive council. There's about 250 companies here. And one of the best things about it is that this organization helps identify and solve common operational challenges and applies it to best practices and innovation solutions in the manufacturing area. So a little bit of both. I assume we're going to hear a lot about integrating in the IoT side. Very interested in hearing more about what you have to say. So there you go. There's Greg.
Thank you. So we're here at the IoT conference, and we're focused on all kinds of awesome, cool technologies and ways to solve problems and how we integrate our systems and how we pull data and collect data. And what I want to do is bring us back, and maybe not quite as fun and something we neglect at times, and talk about how we integrate people into the IoT. And really talk about a common sense approach to digital transformation. And the thought here is all that technology can only serve a purpose if it serves the customer. And on the other end of all of that information, there's always a person somewhere. So I want to bring us back to that, and I know we all are aware of that, but sometimes we may lose sight of it as we start to go into our projects. Case study. Let me start with a case study example. In this case, there was a large bottling company that launched a MES system, or manufacturing efficiency system, across the European operations, and this was a number of years ago. But they did everything right. They had a perfect plan, they did all their early management, they pulled together all of the resources, the sensors, they put everything in place, and had what one would contend a perfect startup. System came up, data's flowing, everything's working. They invested millions, as you can expect. And of course, they're going to get many millions back in value. A year later, what happened? A year later, performance is exactly the same as what it was before the system went in. Spent millions, no return. So they retrenched, they went back and evaluated the situation and said, oh wow, we forgot to bring our people along. They didn't put management routines in place, standard operating procedures, the communication protocol. Everything behind it was left. And they thought that this was going to change how performance would then result. And of course it didn't. Case study one. They did go back, and after they retrenched, then of course the value came. So it was a year after they had anticipated, but they had to go back and then do all the work in the front end, the foundational work, to get the value for their technology. Case study two. This happened when I was at Lance, which was a number of years ago as well. We were looking at putting a new CMMS system in, an enterprise-wide computerized maintenance management system. So we had a number of plants in our fleet. They all had different CMMS systems. They didn't talk to each other. Some were obsolete. So it was time to go in and put one enterprise system in. So of course, as we started evaluating vendors and the types of different CMMSs that were out there and figuring out what would integrate with our ERP, we went and benchmarked. So we happened to benchmark a chicken processing plant that had recently launched a CMMS system. And the word was, this launch was perfect. They came in, they implemented well, they got all their historical data in place, all their PMs were up to speed, everything was done well. So our team went in, and they found that did happen. All the technical side was done extremely well. But then when they went and talked to the maintenance manager and the maintenance team hated it. Didn't work for them, it was cumbersome, it made their job harder. And so when that team came back out of there, he said, wow, I think the system's good, but they didn't pull the team in. They didn't ask for their opinions, they didn't pull them into the development and design, and as a result, they didn't have ownership. So that actually failed miserably. On one side, it looked good, but then the results, they didn't come. So that begs the question is, what is the role of data and the IoT in business? And with those case studies pointed out, we can either choose to implement and hope and think that the system is going to change the culture, Or we can take a proactive approach and we can build a bridge. We can be very intentional, we can plan well, we can go in and work on our culture and our work systems, and then bring the data into support. So when we think about people, if you think about the people in our organizations, whether it's a manufacturing organization, a bank, any kind of organization, everything we do begins, ends, and revolves around our people. So ultimately, that's the customer. Those are the people we're trying to serve to make their job easier, to make it more efficient. And when we think about our people, what do we know? We know that people are creatures of habit. We all are. We like the known. No matter how good or bad it is, I'm comfortable because I know what to expect. And if something happens, then I can deal with it because my environment I know well. I'm comfortable. The other thing we know about people is because of that, people resist change. We can be here today and this could be a miserable situation, hot, but we know it. And I could tell you, oh, it's really great over there, but I don't really want to go over there because I don't know it. It's unknown. So that's uncomfortable. So again, people are creatures of habit, and no matter what the situation is, no matter what you tell them, they're going to resist change. So culture change has got to be a primary focus of any system deployment. We've really got to dig deep into the technology. We've got to dig deep into all the information systems and sensors and software, but we can't forget about the culture because that's going to make us or break us, as those case studies showed. With that, what do? We normally think about actions lead to results. That's what they were thinking about in the chicken processing plant. We're going to do all these actions, and boy, we're going to get great results. But what I would ask you to do is step back and think about experiences. So if we think about ourselves and those people that we're serving, we're setting up a set of experiences for them that then create their beliefs. And then their beliefs lead to actions. And then the actions create the results as an outcome. So we need to go below the waterline. And if you think again about the CMMS launch, those people's experiences were, hey, this got dumped on me. My belief is it made my job harder, so as a result, my actions are not going to support the system. My actions are going to be quite the contrary. If they would have gone in a different way and said, hey, we're going to bring this system to make your job easier, what are your problems that we can solve? And they were able to participate in that, then they would have had a completely different set of experiences. Their beliefs would be, this system's here to help me, and Joe, you're not on board. You get over here on board with me because this is better for us. Then as a result, you'd have positive actions, and of course, the results would flow. So again, step back, go below the waterline, and think about the people and the culture. I'm not going to go into detail here. You can look this up. It's under opexleadershipnetwork.org, but this is the engagement framework, and it talks about how you take an organization and create engagement, discretionary effort, ownership, and of course, we know that results in performance. So if you go beyond the foundational elements, you'll see there's 47 components that create a healthy, high-performing organization. And what I want you to see is that under resources, sensors, information technology, all of that, software, it falls under tools, and it provides information. So there are two things out of 47 elements of a very healthy, high-performing organization. Everything we're working on gives them two components of that. And then as an adjacency, that will inform the communication side around performance meetings. It'll put data into the performance side so they know what they're working on and where they're at. It provides metrics and KPIs and to some level visual controls. So as an adjacency, it supports that, but it only has 2 of 47 elements. So again, it's about perspective. Now I want to jump into a generic example of the building blocks, and I'm going to give you a specific one for manufacturing. So if we think about the building blocks, where do we start? As we mentioned, culture, leadership, values, mission, vision, purpose. We got to make sure we have that block in place. Secondly is reliability and systems maintenance. So no matter what our business, do we have a way to keep our systems functioning and running well? We've got to make sure that block's in place. If we have chaos in our organization, no amount of data is going to fix the chaos. We have to make sure we have systems to ensure that if we have assets in manufacturing, we've got to make sure that that machine runs when it's supposed to run. Get rid of the unplanned downtime, eliminate the chaos. So that's about the systems. Then of course on the people side, we need standard work, we need management routines. So that's the structured process for our people. Next, communication structure. Do we have ways to get the information both horizontally and vertically through our organization? Are there places where we have breakage in communication that even if we had information, we can't get the right information to the right people at the right time? We got to make sure our communication structure is effective. And then lastly, the last building block would be root cause analysis, or RCA. Continuous improvement, problem solving, all those tools, Lean Six Sigma, DMAIC, all those things fall into here. So these are the building blocks for success. And if we have those blocks and we put them together, we've got a nice foundation. And then there's one component that completes the foundation, one component that really makes it work. And that's our digitization and information systems. So don't think of it as the first block in. Think of it as the last block into a strong foundation. Then you'll have your ultimate success. So now let's step back and go through the same protocol, but now let's use manufacturing as an example. So we want to perform at a high-performing organization. We want great results, so we want operational excellence. Where do we start? Again, culture, just like the building block. It's about the morale, leadership, values, mission, vision, purpose, so hopefully we've got that in place. Next, it's about the maintenance systems. So again, system maintenance we talked about, specific to manufacturing. It's preventative maintenance. Okay, that's the maintenance side of our assets. And then autonomous maintenance. That's asset care for our operators. But these are the systems to make sure when I turn that piece of equipment on, I can rely that it will function. I'm eliminating my major stops. I'm making sure that my asset can work. So that eliminates some level of chaos. Next is our daily management systems. What are some of the components in manufacturing? Of course, technical training, 5S, visual management, system center lines. Do I have my system center line? Do I have a target and then the boundaries? SPC control charts. And then lastly, standard work, leader standard work, CILs or hourly standard work, SOPs, standard operating procedures. Again, this is our people system. And all of that together are our daily management systems. So we've got maintenance to make sure our systems work well, and then we have all these systems for our people to work with the assets to get an outcome. You're pretty good if you can do this and do it well. So the next step is root cause analysis. And these are all the tools we're familiar with. Kaizen, cause mapping, FMEA, value stream mapping, DMAIC, they all fall into there. So that's where if we have a problem, we can go out and solve the problem and inform our daily management system. Now, if all that's in place, now we're ready for data collection. We're ready to have data. And of course, if we have data, then that provides data to our MES system where we do our analytics. That's where you can create your digital twin and all the other pieces you want to do to really optimize your system. So these are all the building blocks, and now how do they work together? Well, our daily management system creates the data. And of course, the data then goes to our MES analytical system, and then that informs our daily management system. So the loop begins to give us higher performance. So that allows our systems to continually improve. We're not only going to keep them where they're at, but we're going to continue to have them grow and perform at higher levels. Then what happens when we want to take it to the next level or we have an issue? Well, then that's where our MES system gives the data to our root cause analysis group, reliability teams. And then those reliability teams, again, inform our daily management system and improve our standard work, improve anything, and even down to the PM/AM side. But that's how the systems work together and integrate with one another. The key takeaway is, if I just put data collection and MES into a manufacturing plant or a system, it doesn't do anything. I have to have all the other components for it to work with it to get the value. At my company, we have a lot of these components in place, so we're ready for MES. We've done some basic data collection, but we're ready for an enterprise system. And of course, people want to know, what's the value? How much are we going to gain from this? And I keep telling them, well, here's the number. However, don't forget, data doesn't do anything. The people do the work. The systems do the work. It will give us the opportunity to shed light on where our opportunities are, but the data itself is not going to create the value. Again, keeping perspective. If you want to launch, the first thing you want to do is go in and do a heat map, understand where your organization is, what is their readiness for change. I'm just going to show you briefly. This is a heat map that shows you locations and what are those areas on the left. We're going to assess our hardware systems, our existing software and security. Those are the things we do and do well. Those are the things that this team and people at this conference, this is what we focus on, and we should. But now if we want to go through implementation, we got to talk about leadership. Does our leadership team have experience with data? Does the leadership team have passion for the data? Or are they just going to discount it because they want to do it their own way? Workforce structure. Do we have the right workforce structure? And even in the leadership side, because when you bring data to the table and you bring all of this new technology to the table, that may force you to change your work structure to get the biggest value out of the data. Workforce competency. Are they ready for it? Workforce adaptability and change readiness. Is this an area where they're used to changing all the time, or is this a place that's been here for a long time and has done it the same way for a long time? You got to assess what's the activation energy to get them over the hump. Standard work processes, are they in place? CI problem solving. IT and technical staff. Is your IT and technical staff capable? Do you have to outsource some talent? Do you have to train them and bring them up to a higher level of capability? Of course, time to implement. The CFO and everyone else always wants to know, how long is it going to take? And then resources. Do we have the appropriate resources? So as you do your readiness assessment, of course we're going to focus on the top three. But when we do an assessment, or when I think about an assessment, I overweight things such as leadership, experience, passion, standard work processes, because those are the things that are going to make or break your success. And so if we think about the strategy, again, bringing it back, there's really three big elements. First, as we talked about, people. Don't forget the people. Keep them front and center. Those are the customers. Those are the people who are going to be using the information and data and technology. And if they use it well, we're going to look like superstars. If they fall down, then, oh, it's that technology that came in that caused all this problem. And we don't want the fingers pointing at us. Next is the processes. That's the standard work, the daily management systems. It doesn't matter where you are, whether it's banking, academia, manufacturing. We've got processes that we have to have in place to leverage the data. And then finally, it's the technology. We've got to make sure all three of those circles come in and we have focus in all those areas. And if we do, then that can lead to disciplined execution. And of course, that's the sweet spot, and that's the value that we're trying to bring with technology. So my takeaway and my ask of the group is, after you leave here and get back into the technical side, always just kind of come back and just think for a moment, are we doing the right thing to engage our teams and our people? And if you do that, I guarantee there may be more work on the front end, but then the payback on the back end will be much easier, and of course, much more fruitful. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know we're a little short on time.
That's okay. Sir, go to the mic, please. Thank you.
Hey, Greg, this is great. So what was the one thing that surprised you that you thought wasn't going to be an issue that was, and that was an issue that you thought would be an issue and wouldn't? Like, what were the things that caught you off guard, if anything?
In an implementation?
Yeah, doing an implementation and working with the teams and kind of rolling this stuff out in your own operations. Yeah,
I guess the one thing that, if you go back in my history, I spent 10 years coaching football, so I'm always got this mindset of how you prepare teams for a game, an event, an implementation, which again, this is kind of a discrete point in time. And I guess one of the things that surprises me is just in general how in the business world, we don't generally tend to think that way. We get caught into our silos and our functional expertise areas, and as a result, we're not thinking kind of end to end. And so I guess my personal surprise is, even when we did the CMMS system back at my former company, it was how hard it was to get the technical teams to really go out and engage with the maintenance teams, the actual people on the floor, the planners, and get them all reeled together to make sure that we were actually serving their need and not just putting in a system and saying, wow, we have a comprehensive system, we win. So that's the one thing that, from a surprise for me, is how I'm often surprised that you really have to go back and really push people to do that.
Okay.
And then the other question was, Paul, the other question was what again?
What did you find out?
Sure.
Something really neat that you found out?
And I'm thinking about implementations in general. Things that you didn't know when you found out.
Well, what about from an IoT perspective? What did you learn from an IoT, something new that during this whole process? From an IoT perspective, because I mean, I'm curious as well as knowing what you've learned out of this. How did you learn anything about IoT being in this space? I mean, from manufacturing. I mean, where do you learn more about the goods and the bads and what to do from an implementation standpoint?
Well, I think for me personally, it's multifold.
And the manufacturing group that you're a part of, how do they learn?
Sure. The primary way to learn is to go out and engage and benchmark with those that are doing it well. So that's one key element of making sure that you do the implementations and understand the technologies effectively. Obviously, coming to conferences like this gets you up to speed so you can understand where those value equations are, what the technologies that are emerging are. The other thing that I find interesting too is, I think, especially in CPG, now there's some CPG areas like bottling and cereal and some of the places that tend to make a lot of money, breweries, they tend to understand the value. And when you get into other segments of CPG, they're still kind of caught in a time warp. And so we need to try to elevate all boats so they understand that this is the key. And what I would contend is, at least today, those companies that invest and begin to implement and get the right information into their systems, they're staged to have a significant competitive advantage. And those that don't, well, they're just not going to have a competitive advantage, at least today. If I fast forward 7 years, maybe 10 years, I would say without this, you're not going to compete.
Got it.
So that's how
Excellent.
I think about it.
Great. Greg, thank you. Appreciate it. Everybody.